Welcome into Off the Hook Sports. I am your host, Caleb Calhoun. We have a lot to get to today. We're going to talk about Joey Aguilar and his arrival time and when he's expected to get to Tennessee and how much Tennessee needs him to get there. We're not sure how that's all going to work out yet, so we're going to discuss that. We're also going to talk a good bit about, and this is going to be kind of interesting, we're going to talk a lot about Tennessee spring transfer needs because there's a lot there that we got to talk about because we're not exactly sure how and what they still need with spring transfer portal, the portal closed, but guys still available to grab. They've added two already, and actually three when you add Joey Aguilar. So we're going to talk about who else they need to add. So we're going to get to that. There was a recent column about Jeremy Pruitt and exactly what Jeremy Pruitt, where he ranks among the worst coaching hires of the last 10 years. And yes, he was on there for Tennessee. We're going to discuss that and what that meant and what things were like and how that hire even happened. We're just going to do a little bit of reflection on that. Also, we're going to discuss a column about Josh Heupel. Again, reports and rumors and ideas and delusions that he might one day go back to Oklahoma. That would be kind of interesting. We're going to discuss, would that actually happen? Is that possible? And Donald Trump and Nick Saban, are they working to fix NIL? Can they do anything with an executive order? We're going to talk about that. I think this could just be all talk, but we're going to see if there's anything that they could actually do through executive order that would make an impact. So a lot to get to. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Tell a friend, ring the bell, turn your notifications on. We are building something great here. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Banks & Jones, play to win, why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. We are live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. Let's get rolling with today's tough question. Obviously, Joey Aguilar will be joining the Tennessee football quarterback room this fall as Nico Iamaleava's replacement. He'll be there with George McIntyre and Jake Merklinger. Aguilar is the favorite to win the starting job, with Merklinger as an underdog who could very well win it. George McIntyre, the freshman, is the biggest underdog. The question recently has been, when will Joey Aguilar arrive at Tennessee? Aguilar has reportedly been having virtual sessions with Tennessee's coaches via Zoom to help him get started with learning the offense while he completes his necessary academic obligations to complete his transfer, and the Vols are expecting him to get on campus in mid to late May. Heupel said he's able to be in contact, but he should be showing up relatively quickly. So today's tough question is this, and this is, I'm going to quote actually Josh Heupel before I get there. Heupel also says, you're going to start with the offense, understanding the communication process, the play calls, but then fundamentals and technique. As everybody gets back here, then we get into more ball where we're all together. He'll start developing timing with the wide receivers as they get out there and start throwing it and growing and starting to build connection with your teammates and start garnering respect from those guys. So here's today's tough question, guys. Can Joey Aguilar pick up this offense completely within 3 weeks? 3 weeks is what he's going to have during fall camp to fully pick up the offense. If he studies the playbook now, if he arrives at Tennessee in mid-May, and if he works out with the receivers and goes through the offseason conditioning program, can he fully pick up the offense in 3 weeks, or will there be a learning curve in September? That's today's tough question. I've got it going up on the poll question right now, so you guys go ahead and vote. We'll say, can Joey Aguilar fully pick up Josh Heupel's offense by the start of the season? We'll say, yes, it's an easy offense to learn, or no, there will be a curve early, or no, there will be growing pains is what I'll say. You guys let me know on the poll question. So that's today's tough question. Again, it's brought to you by Banks & Jones. Can Joey Aguilar fully pick up Josh Heupel's offense by the start of the season? Yes, it's an easy offense to learn. No, there will be growing pains. I'm going to tell you guys up front, I think, yes, it's an easy offense to learn. This is one of my hottest takes about Tennessee football's offense. I think the wide receiver position is harder to learn and figure out than the quarterback position. I think the quarterback and the receiver do have to get to a certain rhythm, but the wide receivers actually have to do stuff that they're not used to doing in other programs, which is they have to read defenses and determine which route to break on specifically based on what they do. That's why a lot of guys never start their first year in the system at wide receiver for Tennessee. So I actually really do believe that Tennessee's offense is, I think, pretty easy, honestly, for a quarterback to read. And let me just tell you about this offense real quick. This offense, and this was one of the pretext Nico Iamaleava's family gave for leaving to go to UCLA, but I don't know if it's true or not. They could just be saying that to save face. However, the offense doesn't really prepare you for the NFL as a quarterback, but it is easy to pick up because you're taught to look at one side of the field and just read a safety. That's literally all you're taught to do in this offense. Okay. Look at one side of the field and read the safety. And that's how you figure out where to go. Many of us guys could figure out this offense in 2 days as a quarterback. It is very, very simple. Establishing chemistry with your receivers is the most important part. So the real question with Joey Aguilar is he willing to put in the work with his receivers in the offseason when coaches aren't there? He's got to get a rapport with Mike Matthews, and he's got to get a rapport with Braylon Staley. He's got to get a rapport with Chris Bradshaw. He's got to get a rapport with Boo Carter if Boo Carter's going to be there. But he also has to get a rapport with, whoever Tennessee might add. They might go to the portal route and add a couple other receivers. There's also Amari Jefferson or Darius Jackson. The other 2 freshman receivers. There's a lot of guys he's got to build a rapport with, but I think most importantly, Mike Matthews, Chris Bradshaw, Boo Carter, Braylon Staley, he's got to build a rapport with them. Those are the most important ones. Can Joey Aguilar build the rapport he needs to build with those guys quickly? I think he can. I think if he works with those guys in the summer, I think he will easily be able to pick up the offense. And Travis brings up something. Of course he can pick it up. Handoff, bubble screen, handoff, deep route. Travis, you make a good point. I will say, I think that, excuse me. I think that, I think handoff, bubble screen, handoff, deep route. That is a lot of what they do. I think that they will throw over the middle a lot more with Joey Aguilar, though, because of the type of passer he is and the gunslinger he is. So you'll see a few more of those routes. That might complicate it a bit, but I do think the offense is still similar to figure out. General Ursus jumps in and says, a great point. Joe Milton came in after spring and started back in Heupel's first year. General Ursus, and it may not be the best example because Joe Milton was horrible to Heupel's first year and he lost his starting job to Hendon Hooker. But your second point is good. Ainge and Schaefer both started back in 2004 in a much more complicated system compared to Heupel's. Yes and no. Would I say Randy Sanders / David Cutcliffe had a harder offense to figure out than Josh Heupel since it was pro style? Yes, but they were able to really simplify offenses based on the type of quarterbacks they had. And in 2004, Randy Sanders really simplified that offense for Eric Ainge and Brent Schaefer. Really simplified it, let the other guys do the work. One of the problems with Eric Ainge in 2005 is Sanders went from simplifying the offense to, when it became Ainge and Clausen, Sanders threw everything at Eric Ainge that summer. That combined with Rick Clausen being right there competing with him for the starting job, and the team gravitating towards Clausen kind of wrecked Ainge for a little while. So, but I do get your point. Like, they were able to handle it with Ainge and Schaefer, and I would still say even the simplified version that Ainge and Schaefer ran is still easier to pick up. And they didn't pick it up until fall camp either, because there were very few early enrollees back then. But Ainge and Schaefer did pick it up, and I don't see why Joey Aguilar wouldn't be able to pick it up. So vote on the poll question. Can Joey Aguilar fully pick up Josh Heupel's offense by the start of the season? Yes, it's an easy offense to learn. No, there will be growing pains. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones.
The poll question, can Joey Aguilar fully pick up Josh Heupel's offense by the start of the season? And man, it's close. Yes, it's an easy offense to learn. No, there will be growing pains. It is a 50-50 split right now, guys. 50-50 split. So that should give you an idea of how much people are debating whether or not this offense is an easy offense to learn. I mean, I think it can be very, very, very tricky to learn for receivers. I don't think it's tricky to learn for quarterbacks. So I think Tennessee is going to be fine with Joey Aguilar picking up the offense. The only question is, will he win the starting job? I mean, again, it's not a guarantee that Joey Aguilar is going to win the starting job. So that's kind of the interesting part about this is that Aguilar he's still got to compete with Jake Merklinger. And I don't think it's the experience thing. There's a chance Jake Merklinger is just better. And so I think that Jake Merklinger is still in a fight. And if George McIntyre takes a leap forward with his conditioning and the offseason workouts, he's got the best talent of the three. I do think that. Now, in terms of a fit for Josh Heupel's system, you could talk to Will West about this. He believes Joey Aguilar is the best fit. The deep ball's not there, but honestly, when the receivers are so wide open, it's more important to be accurate than have the perfect deep ball or have the bazooka arm. I still don't know why Josh Heupel falls in love with that bazooka arm. It's kind of a weird thing, given the fact that knowing what his offense is, as long as you have a decent enough deep ball and as long as you're accurate on the deep ball, that's fine, quite honestly. But Joey Aguilar is going to learn the system fine. That's my take. This offense is very, very easy to figure out. This offense, Hendon Hooker picked it up very quickly. It's obviously even easier for veteran quarterbacks to figure out because Hendon Hooker picked it up very quickly and thrived in it. Mackenzie Milton picked it up. Mackenzie Milton went from Scott Frost's offense to Josh Heupel's offense, which are different offenses in a year's time, and picked it up very quickly in 2018 and led UCF to an undefeated season again. Drew Lock took a year, but was still very good in 2015 or in 2016 and then balled out in 2017. But Drew Lock was a little bit more of an underclassman. Dylan Gabriel was a true freshman and picked it up. So when you put all of that together, yes, Josh Heupel's offense is easy enough for a quarterback to figure out that a veteran like Joey Aguilar will pick it up very easily, even if his decision-making is questionable, even if he is a gunslinger, even if he's a gunslinger without Brett Favre's arm strength, which can be a problem. I think in general, Joey Aguilar is going to figure this offense out and things are going to be fine. Trust me on that. If Joey Aguilar struggles next year, it won't be because he didn't figure out the offense. That's not really a thing, okay? Joey Aguilar will be fine. The real question will be how quickly did the receivers pick up the offense? And I'm talking about the receivers, Mike Matthews, Chris Brazzell, and Braylon Staley specifically. Excuse me. Those three guys are the most important to pay attention to because those are the three that really need to establish a rapport with Aguilar. He wants to establish a rapport with the other guys too, I'm sure, but you have a little bit of limited time to establish that. So he really needs to establish it with those three guys specifically. And if he's unable to, then there will be a problem. Steve Sullivan jumps in and says, hit that like and subscribe. Y'all, yes, please do. Hit the like and subscribe button now if you can. Joey Aguilar, can he learn the offense? Can he fully pick up Josh Heupel's offense by the start of the season? We're at now 22 votes in the poll question, and 59% say yes, it's an easy offense to learn. 41% say no, there will be growing pains. I'm on the 59%, it's an easy offense to learn. Particularly for an upperclassman. Now, many of you would question about Nico last year, then why did he struggle? Putting aside how you feel about Nico, the quarterback, I thought Nico was going to be fine this year. It's a little more difficult for underclassmen, and Nico had other issues like the receiver position that those guys weren't fully healthy, and the guys that would have been fully healthy hadn't really picked up the offense yet. That was the issue with Nico Iamaleava. Portions of the program brought to you by Chattanooga Mortgage. Congratulations, your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chat with 2tsmortgage.com. Chat with 2tsmortgage.com. In case you guys weren't on yesterday, I just want to give you guys a reminder. Dave is dealing with a personal matter. Please keep him in your thoughts. He's out all week. We will have him back, but he is out at least this week. He is dealing with a personal situation. So just please keep him in your thoughts and prayers on that front. Let's go ahead and move on. There is more talk to Josh Heupel, maybe one day going to Oklahoma. That's right. Josh Heupel, as we all know, was an assistant coach at Oklahoma for 9 years. For the Final Four as offensive coordinator before getting fired in 2014 because he was scapegoated by Bob Stoops for not making the Johnny Manziel situation work out, for not making the Trevor Knight situation work out because Bob Stoops tried to force Josh Heupel to make Trevor Knight like Johnny Manziel with the RPO air raid that Kevin Sumlin and Cliff Kingsbury ran, even though that wasn't a fit for what Josh Heupel liked to do. Josh Heupel got scapegoated, he got fired, and then Bob Stoops brought in Lincoln Riley to run the exact same offense. However, he is an Oklahoma grad. He was the quarterback of the one Oklahoma team to win a national title in the last, what is it at this point? Maybe 40 years, 39 years. So there is an affinity for Oklahoma there. Brent Venables is entering the college football season on the hot seat in 2025 after he fired Seth Littrell as offensive coordinator, who Josh Heupel just brought on, by the way, at Tennessee. With all of that, Tulsa World columnist Barry Trammell went on Saturday Down South and discussed the possibility of Josh Heupel returning to Tennessee. Yes, discussed the returning to Oklahoma. Barry Trammell discussed the possibility of Josh Heupel returning to Oklahoma. Now, let's point this out. Given everything that happened, that's a real bold claim to make. Here's what Barry Trammell said specifically on Saturday Down South. And again, read Barry Trammell's work. He's with the Tulsa World. His exact quote was, if Brent Venables were fired, Barry Trammell says, restoring the tradition and success at Tennessee makes for a pretty good life. It's a pretty good place to coach football, Rocky Top. And when you've won like Heupel has, beaten Alabama, making the college football playoff, doing all those things, he's a hero in a place that's a pretty good place to be a hero in. And life's turned out pretty good for him. His career is going really well, which would say there's no reason for him to leave Tennessee. But Trammell said, if OU moved on from Venables, here's what Trammell said about Heupel. Quote, he'd be the first call, I assume, Trammell said. I have no idea if Josh would entertain the notion or accept. I have no idea. I do know this. He still has a lot of ties. Family still lives here. They got a lot of Oklahoma ties still, so I don't think he would dismiss it. I also think it would be a very popular choice. I don't know that he would do it. Like I said, Tennessee's a pretty good place to coach football. Trammell is saying up front that Heupel's in a good enough situation, so he probably wouldn't entertain Oklahoma. But he is talking about his ties there and suggesting that it's a possibility. Well, bank on it. Brought to you by Commercial Bank, member FDIC, life made better. Josh Heupel will not leave for Oklahoma as long as Bob Stoops there and as long as he has options. Bank on it.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank.
All right, bank on it. Josh Heupel will not leave Oklahoma unless Bob Stoops retires or he runs out of options. Or steps away from the program, excuse me. So let me break both of those down. Josh Heupel, I told you guys, he was scapegoated by what happened in 2014. I encourage you guys to all look. I'm going to post a link to it now. We did a video last year, the week of the Tennessee-Oklahoma game, on why Oklahoma really fired Josh Heupel. We brought in longtime Oklahoma columnist John Hoover, who told the full story of it, guys. And it was not a pretty story. Josh Heupel has no love lost for Bob Stoops because of that. They are cordial with each other. He returned for a few things to be honored and things like that. But Josh Heupel does not at all have any love loss for Oklahoma as long as Bob Stoops is there because of how that relationship ended. So they would have to get rid of Bob Stoops. On top of that, though, or I'm sorry, not on top of that, or if they don't get rid of Bob Stoops, Heupel has to run low on options. Now, how does he run low on options? You see this all the time. a coach's seat is getting warm in a certain place. Fans are getting dissatisfied, but he's more appreciated nationally than he is by the fan base. That could happen at Tennessee. If people think Josh Heupel's getting stale, just 8-9 win years, maybe 9-10, something like that. Maybe Josh Heupel doesn't like the way he's being treated at Tennessee. Maybe Oklahoma fires Brent Venables and wants to bring their favorite son home. Maybe at that point, Josh Heupel, fearing his options are running low and that he could enter the hot seat at Tennessee, decides, you know what, I'm bolting Tennessee to go to Oklahoma because I don't like how I'm treated here and I don't like being on a hot seat and I don't like risking that. That is the one way Josh Heupel could go to Oklahoma if Oklahoma doesn't get rid of Bob Stoops, who is directly connected to the program in so many ways. Now, what does that look like? Well, here's what it looks like. Josh Heupel already has a bit of an egg on his face with the Nico situation. This year they don't do what they should do. They go 7-5, 8-4. But they get a mulligan because Joey Aguilar is the starting quarterback, and Joey Aguilar, and there was the whole Nico drama thing messed things up. But then they, in 2026, only win 7, 8, 9 games and miss the college football playoff. And then all of a sudden you see fans start to get restless. That's how all of a sudden things get a little stale and we start talking about Josh Heupel as a potential hot seat coach going into 2027. The other way this could happen is that this year's a disappointing year and then there's a mass exodus of players in the transfer portal and the recruiting rankings suffer in the spring of next year, at which point fans start to jump off the Heupel train a little bit. Again, this isn't him getting fired. This is just him getting a little bit of pressure put on him and feeling the heat to a certain degree. Get it? Heat to a certain degree. Sorry, dad joke. My son turned 11 months 2 days ago, and I am getting more and more on dad jokes by the day. Anyways, that he could start feeling the heat a little bit. And here's where the heat could really be felt. And people are bringing it up now. If Alex Golesh starts really balling at UCF, say Josh Heupel kind of stumbles the next couple of years. I don't mean go 5-7, 4-8, but 8-4, 8-4, something like that. And then you see an exodus. You don't see the recruiting do as well. The transfer portal struggles. And then say Alex Golesh, who has gone 7-6 his first 2 years at South Florida, just takes a huge leap forward. And the South Florida offense just starts to ball out. If that happens, you're definitely going to see a lot of possible talk of Alex Golesh maybe getting hired at Tennessee. Now, looking at not just that, Tennessee fans will start talking about it a lot, at which point Josh Heupel feeling the heat would even then more likely go to Oklahoma. I wouldn't have said this a year ago. I would have said a year ago the only way Josh Heupel goes to Oklahoma is if Bob Stoops is completely excommunicated from the university forever. Now, I would say he would go to Oklahoma if he didn't get fired for a poor job at Tennessee, but got a little stale at Tennessee and fans got restless. And this is how they get restless. 8-4, 8-4, maybe 9-3 one year, and Alex Golesh just absolutely balls out at South Florida. South Florida this year, I'm just going to point out, has a rough schedule. They could easily start 0-3. They have Boise State at home and then Florida and Miami on the road for the first 3 games. And then they also have Memphis and Navy on the road down the road. So they're going to be underdogs in 5 games minimum this year. All those are underdog games. However, Boise State at home is a huge game. If they can beat Boise State at home, even if they lose to Florida and Miami, they'll beat South Carolina State, Charlotte, North Texas, and Florida Atlantic. So that'll get them to 5-2. Memphis and Navy both on the road. Those could be 2 more losses. But if they split those, they could easily go 9-3 this year. And all of a sudden, you are looking at Alex Golesh in a different light. And if you are, and Josh Heupel sputters for the next couple of years, the pressure really builds on Josh Heupel. I mean, significantly so. Because many people still think Alex Golesh was the brains behind the success at Tennessee after 2022. He leaves after 2022, and Tennessee has not done what people thought they would do in 2023 and 2024, offensively speaking. Defensively is a different story last year, but offensively, they haven't been the same with Joey Halzle, and there's a genuine belief now that maybe Golesh was the reason behind the offensive success and not Josh Heupel. I'm not saying that's fair. I'm not saying that's accurate, but I'm saying that type of pressure could be what would lead Heupel to go to Oklahoma if he was feeling that type of heat. I guess I wouldn't go down the 2026 road. And the reason I wouldn't go down the 2026 road is because if I have a Bolts for Oklahoma, it'll be after this year because Brent Venables is going to get fired after this year, I believe. So what would happen? Brent Venables gets fired. Heupel sputters to like 8-4 because of the whole Nico quarterback transition situation. Alex Golesh shocks the world, goes 10-2, maybe upsets Florida or Miami, and wins the American Athletic Conference. At that point, everybody's going to be talking about wanting Alex Golesh. Josh Heupel will be tired of that talk. Oklahoma will have an opening as alma mater. It would almost be a mutual decision for Tennessee and Oklahoma to part ways so they could go get Alex Golesh to Tennessee. That's how that would work out. It's not crazy to think about now. It's less crazy than it was a year ago. I'm just saying. Portions of the program are brought to you by Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. When we come back, we're going to talk about Tennessee's spring transfer needs and play a little 4 downs. And we also have some talk with Jeremy Pruitt and Donald Trump and Nick Saban. They're trying to save NIL. How is that going to work out? We're going to discuss all that. Stick with us. 2 minutes off the Hook Sports.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. Portions of the program brought to you by Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. hdknoxville.com. hdknoxville.com. It is time for this day in Tennessee sports history. And we got a couple of happy birthdays to send out to a couple of legendary players who were actually teammates at Tennessee, funny enough. First, a happy birthday to Jason Witten, who turns 43 years old today. Jason Witten was born on this day in 1982. Actually, he was born in Washington, D.C., but then grew up in Elizabethton, Tennessee. And so happy birthday to Jason Witten. Another happy birthday to one Dustin Colquitt. Dustin Colquitt is also 43, the same age as Jason Witten, funny enough. And he is a legendary Pro Bowl punter. Both of these were Pro Bowl players in the NFL. Dustin Colquitt won a Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs in 2019. And he should have won the Ray Guy Award at Tennessee in 2003. Still one of the greatest punts of all time, that punt on Sean Taylor against Miami that Sean Taylor fumbled. So happy birthday to Jason Witten and Dustin Colquitt, two legendary players at Tennessee. This day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by Peak IV Hydration in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live your life to the fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration. Link is in the chat down below. Moving on. Tennessee football has added 3 players in the post-spring transfer portal after losing John Slaughter, Larry Johnson, Nico Iamaleava, Aiden Bussell, and at the moment, Jacoby Thomas, although he could be back. Tennessee has multiple needs to fill in the transfer portal. Still, they did fill a defensive line void with Josh Shell because they need more depth there. That's what Rodney Garner values more than anything else. I said they needed a cornerback because of Jermon McCoy's injury. They got a cornerback in Colton Hood, a big pickup out of Colorado. Those are 2 great pickups. However, they still have a lot more to do. So we're going to play a little 4 downs. 4 downs brought to you by Ted Russell Ford. We're going to discuss other positions that Tennessee needs to add more players from, and I'm going to break down each of them specifically. So I don't have the elements, so we'll start with Cooper Mays, who tells you guys to all hit like and subscribe right now. All right, listen to Cooper Mays. Coop here, first down. I'm quoting Coop. First down from Coop. Tennessee football spring transfer needs. Offensive linemen. I think they actually need to pick up 2 offensive linemen. They need another tackle and another interior lineman because they're replacing their entire interior line from last year with Cooper Mays, Javonte Spraggins, and Andre Carrick gone. William Satterwhite and transfer Sam Pendleton and Wendell Moe Jr. are all part of the interior line. They're all expected to be starters, but Tennessee needs more bodies. They need at least one more body of a proven guard because you don't know if Moe and Pendleton will both work out. And the interior of the offensive line is the most complicated part to learn in Tennessee's offensive system on the offensive line because most of the run plays are directly vertical. Okay. It's funny. The tackles aren't as important because the quarterback needs to get rid of the ball quickly. Tackles certainly help. Darnell Wright will tell you that. But the interior of the offensive line is the most important. So I think because of that, they need a veteran interior offensive lineman who would be smart enough to pick up Josh Heupel's blocking schemes quickly, just in case Moe or Pendleton doesn't work out. So I think they specifically need an interior offensive lineman. And for depth purposes, they need another tackle. I mean, Larry Johnson entering the transfer portal, that pretty much forces them to go all in on David Sanders at right tackle and Lance Hurd at left tackle. They have a couple of backup options, but they really and truly need another proven tackle so they can have 3 guys that they can switch around because injuries are going to happen, guys. That's just how football works. And they are not equipped right now to deal with injuries at tackle. Other options, so beyond Sanders and Hurd, you can maybe see Bennett Warren stepping into that role, Gage Ginther, but I don't really think so. On the interior of the line, Max Anderson is a guy who could help out, could be a backup center. Brian Grant is another one. Obviously, Sham Umarov is a big one that Tennessee needs. So Sham Umarov, so they have some options, but they need a couple of veterans on each. So I would actually say 2 offensive linemen is what they need. And that is first down, brought to you by Cooper Mays. Cooper Mays brings you second down. Defensive linemen. Now, they did just add Josh Shell. He's not enough. Tennessee lost Amari Thomas, Omar Norman-Lott, and Elijah Simmons last year. On the line right now up front, they returned Bryson Eason, Jackson Moy, Dominic Bailey, and Tyree West. They went 7 deep right now last year. They're now only able to go 5 deep of proven guys with experience with Josh Shell, if you consider proven experience and returning guys. Now, look, David Hobbs could take a step forward. Nathan Robinson is still there. Tyree Weathersby, Jamal Wallace, Isaiah Campbell. They have a bunch of bodies, and you would expect some of them to step in and fill that void and become the next couple of men up. But I do think for depth purposes, they need to add at least one more proven defensive lineman because they need to be able to go as deep as possible. You know, they're obviously not going to have the same impact at edge rusher already that they had last year because Joshua Joseph is a downgrade from James Pierce. I still think Caleb Herring can be effective, and I also am sticking with the fact that Jordan Ross, I think, is the best of all of them and could be better than James Pierce, but they seem to be going with seniority at this point. So with that in mind, I see a potential downgrade there. They need more depth on the defensive line than even last year, not less. So with that, they need to add at least one more defensive lineman. All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Not here, but from All SEC center Cooper Mays. Third down. Actually, no, wait. Third down is Tennessee center. I'm sorry. Tennessee center Cooper Mays. Third down. All right. Third down. Wide receiver. Now, they are targeting a lot of playmakers at wide receiver. I think they're going to be better than last year at wide receiver. Mike Matthews needed a year to pick up the offense because he was a true freshman. I told you it's more complicated for receivers to pick up than quarterbacks. However, with Mike Matthews there, I think now that he's picked it up, will be better than Brew McCoy as the number one wideout last year, because McCoy, for all of his positives, had just lost his step coming off of his broken leg a year before. Probably shouldn't have been starting out there. Chris Brazel, as the complementary receiver on the other side, already has experience in the system. He can be the possession guy. I think he's going to make them better too. And then Braylon Staley will be the new slot guy, who I think should be an upgrade over Squirrel White, because Squirrel White played last year with a shoulder injury. So Braylon Staley in the slot, and then alternated time with Boo Carter. Last year, Tennessee did Brazel, McCoy, and also Dante Thornton, which was 3 wideouts, but largely because they just couldn't get consistent play from the guys because there were so many injuries. So I think this year it'll just be specifically Mike Matthews and Chris Brazel as wideouts, and then Braylon Staley and Boo Carter alternating time in the slot, with Amari Jefferson, Joaquin Dotson, Travis Smith Jr., Madarius Jackson, all his backups who need some time to develop and provide depth. However, what I just said is only 4 guys when Josh Heupel likes to run 3 receivers each time, and one of those guys, Boo Carter, will be splitting reps as a defensive back too. Taking that into account, Tennessee needs another receiver. They need another option. I would say in the slot, or a versatile option who can play in the slot or on the outside, who is a veteran who could pick up this offense quickly and immediately establish a rapport with Joey Aguilar. With that in mind, I think Tennessee needs to go for another receiver, because they do need another dynamic playmaker in this offense. That's really the only way this is going to work out. They could work out with the guys they have, but I'm just speculating that they'll be better. This is a bet that they all live up to their potential. Typically, 1 or 2 guys don't live up to their potential, and then there's also injuries. So taking that into account, I think Tennessee needs to go after another wide receiver, another key playmaker in the transfer portal. And I think that would be the biggest. It's not the most necessary from my perspective, but it's a solid insurance policy. So before I get to 4th down, and you're going to see 4th down in a second, but I'm setting up the poll question. What is Tennessee's greatest position of need in the spring transfer portal? Remaining. And I'm going to say offensive line, defensive line, wide receiver, and the 4th down option, which I will get to soon. First, a quick message from Ted Russell Ford.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer. Save up to $4,350 on a new Ford F-150 XLT, or get into a new Ford Ranger XLT with no payments for 90 days. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location.
4th down brought to you by All SEC center Cooper Mays. Another spring transfer need for Tennessee is safety. Tennessee bolstered its secondary earlier last weekend by adding Colorado transfer Colton Hood. But they now need more help at safety, because right now they have Jordan Thomas getting healthy, which is a good thing, and he's a really good safety. Andre Turrentine has experience, but has limitations. That's it. That's all they have. Idris Farouk has a lot of potential, but we don't have any proof that he could be good right now. Jackson Matthews, we have no proof that he could be good. Tennessee needs another safety with Jacoby Thomas in the transfer portal. You like to go 3 deep at positions of 2 all the time, and I think that they need to add another safety to help out. I believe right now Tennessee's cornerback situation is going to be Jermod McCoy and Ricky Gibson III, with Colton Hood alternating between the two. At the start of the year, it'll be Colton Hood and Ricky Gibson III, Jermod McCoy alternating and working his way back in from the ACL tear. And I believe the nickel situation will be Boo Carter and Jalen McMurray. And then the safety situation comes, and that's where you have Jordan Thomas and Andre Turrentine. And Idris Farouk could be the third person, but you want another proven person too as the third guy for depth. You want proven guys to go one spot deeper than you have at every position as you develop the other guys along. And that's where you need another safety to offset the current loss of Jacoby Thomas. If Jacoby Thomas returns to Tennessee, I will take safety off the board. But for now, they need another safety. So if you guys notice, Tennessee has added an offensive. They've added throughout the transfer portal. They've added offensive line. They've added players at every one of these positions in the transfer portal. Players at 2 of them in the spring transfer portal specifically. And I still have them on the list. They've added 2 offensive linemen, a defensive lineman, a wide receiver, and a defensive back in the transfer portal. And in the spring transfer portal, they have added a defensive lineman and a defensive back. And I still say they need to add all 4 of those positions. They need to continue to upgrade at those spots. That's a big deal. Tennessee's depth is a bit of a question. Now, everybody's depth is going to be a question this day and age in college football with the NIL age. But I think that Tennessee needs to do a better job addressing their depth situation, because right now it's not where it needs to be. And this is what they could do. There's still a lot of guys available at a lot of different positions, and they still have more flex NIL cash. I'm sure they spent a good bit to get Colton Hood because that was a big pickup out of Colorado. But I think there are other players that they could still go for over the next few weeks with the spring transfer portal while the portal's closed, with players still available. So we'll see who they go after. There's plenty of players they could get, so just keep an eye on that. Portions of the program are brought to you by Quality Tire Pro, serving Chattanooga community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. Walk in and say, "Hey, Bo, Off the Hook Sports sent you." QualityTirePros.com. When we come back, we're going to talk about a column related to Jeremy Pruitt. And we're going to play a little hot or cold with it too. Have a little fun. Stick with us. 2 minutes Off the Hook Sports.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln Knoxville.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. Portions of the program are brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. RickTerryJewelry.com. All right. Will Bacchus of CBS Sports wrote a column over the weekend detailing the 15 worst coaching hires of the past decade. Tennessee football head coach Jeremy Pruitt came in at number 5. Bacchus wrote, quote, Pruitt, who coached under the likes of Jimbo Fisher, Mark Richt, and Nick Saban, was one of the best defensive coordinators of the past decade. It seemed like a matter of time before he earned a power conference job. Tennessee made that a reality in 2018, tabbing him as the team's leader after a bungled coaching search. That in itself is a story for another time. His real legacy lies in the NCAA investigation into recruiting violations that led to his firing for cause following a 3-7 2020 campaign. The NCAA Committee on Infractions found the Pruitt's program responsible for more than 200 individual violations, including 18 level 1 in nature. All of his wins from 2019 to 2020 were vacated, and Tennessee was hit with a scholarship reduction that hindered new coach Josh Heupel until recently, plus an $8 million fine. Pruitt will likely never coach college football again. Given what he left Heupel, it's a miracle that Heupel's won 37 games in 4 years. Jeremy Pruitt as a hire was obviously a disastrous hire. What makes the hire worse is not just the bungled coaching search, which was bad. And for those who don't remember, Tennessee went from before the leak happened, we know now from leaked emails that Tennessee initially reached out to John Gruden and he wasn't interested. Then they went the Dan Mullen route. He wasn't interested. And I do believe they did go the Chip Kelly route, but he wasn't interested. Partially because they waited so long to fire Butch Jones. Then they went for Greg Schiano, and they tried to make the Greg Schiano hire, and that was the official hire they were going to make, and they tried to sell it to everybody the day after the last game of the year when they finished 4-8, 0-8 in SEC play for the first time in history. Fans revolted. They didn't want the Greg Schiano hire. It fell apart, and it didn't work. After that, Tennessee went to Mike Gundy, who turned him down. Then they went to Jeff Brom. They seemed to have the Jeff Brom hire in hand, but an offer was made without the president's approval, so that offer was rescinded. By that point, Jeff Brom rejected the Tennessee offer. Then they went to Dave Doran at NC State, who rejected the offer. And then in a last-minute Hail Mary, they tried to get Mike Leach, but as John Curry was trying to get Mike Leach behind the backs of the chancellor and the administration, Philip Fulmer orchestrated a coup to get John Curry fired, make himself athletic director, and then he went and made the hire of Jeremy Pruitt. Here's why Jeremy Pruitt on its face was a horrible hire. In many ways, it was a self-serving move by Philip Fulmer. Fulmer orchestrated the coup and sabotaged what could have been a successful hire in Mike Leach, rest in peace, to then go make the hire himself and make himself athletic director. And then he picked a guy whose stardom would never outshine his own. Because there was no way you could pick Jeremy Pruitt at that time, a defensive coordinator, and believe and not get all the credit for the success Jeremy Pruitt has. Now, one of the reasons Pruitt seemed like a hot candidate at the time was he was a great defensive coordinator, and Kirby Smart was in the midst of getting to the national championship game his second year at Georgia. Smart, a Nick Saban defensive coordinator. Pruitt replaced him, a Nick Saban defensive coordinator. Pruitt also had coached the national championship multiple ones. He was in the midst of winning one at Alabama, and he had coached Florida State to win under Jimbo Fisher. So it just seemed like a repeat of a Georgia hire, but not every hire is the same. Not every hire works out. But it was more self-serving by Philip Fulmer than anything. And that was the biggest problem with the Jeremy Pruitt hire from the start. Now, let's play a little hot or cold. Hot or cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air, 50 years in East Tennessee, integrity matters, cityheatingair.com. We're going to go through all the hires on this ranking and ask which ones were worse on its face than the Jeremy Pruitt hire. Not which ones ended up being worse in hindsight. Which ones were worse on its face? Okay. Number 1, Chad Morris, Arkansas. Chad Morris at Arkansas. Well, actually, we'll start behind Jeremy Pruitt because I'll say if some of these were worse on their face and see how bad a hires they were. Number 15 is Chris Ash at Rutgers. Chris Ash at Rutgers was not a bad hire for the Scarlet Knights at the time. He had success at Ohio State, winning a national title under Urban Meyer. And so there was a belief that he brought a championship pedigree. Rutgers was limited on what they could do. It didn't work out, but you can't blame them for that. They went after who they could go after at the time. Next was Nick Rolovich, Washington State. Okay, again, not as bad as Jeremy Pruitt on its face. There was no reason to believe Nick Rolovich wouldn't work out. There was the whole vaccine issue. I really don't want to get into that at all. But it obviously resulted in him not being able to keep his job. So that's a totally different story. On its face, Nick Rolovich, though, seemed like a solid hire at the time. He had been the head coach at Hawaii for 4 years and went 10-5 the last year before getting hired at Washington. So no, not worse than Jeremy Pruitt on its face. Number 13, Scott Frost at Nebraska. Scott Frost didn't work out. He should not be on this list. There was no reason to believe Scott Frost wouldn't work out at Nebraska. He had gone undefeated in his second year at UCF, inheriting a team that had lost every game 2 years before. Scott Frost, excuse me. There was no reason to not believe Scott Frost would work out. He shouldn't even be on here because you should consider how bad the hire was on its face and whether or not it should have been done. Number 12, Kevin Sumlin, Arizona, 9-20. Not a worse hire than the Jeremy Pruitt hire. Kevin Sumlin did get fired by Texas A&M, but he did have a winning record there every single year. It's just he couldn't get them to the next level. But for a school like Arizona, it did seem like the perfect place. So you can't really blame him. He did struggle, go 9-20, so ended up not working out, but not as bad on its face. Mel Tucker is very similar to the Jeremy Pruitt hire, funny enough. Mel Tucker at Michigan State in 2020. He's number 11 on this list. Mel Tucker actually worked out better than people thought at first. And then, of course, there was the whole personal issue that got him fired. But Mel Tucker had gotten Alabama to a national title game. I would say the hire on its face, though, was worse than the Jeremy Pruitt hire for Michigan State. Michigan State was a more successful program than Tennessee to that point when the hires were made. And Mel Tucker didn't have the same qualifications that Jeremy Pruitt had, believe it or not. And also, his resume was a 5-7 record at Colorado in 1 year before he went to Michigan State. So, yeah, I would actually say Mel Tucker was a worse hire than Jeremy Pruitt. On its face, was not a good hire. Brian Harsin, Auburn, not as bad as the hire as Jeremy Pruitt. Brian Harsin was a good hire coming from Boise State. He did have some success, even though he didn't have the backing of the boosters. I know it didn't work out, but that is what it is. Herm Edwards, Arizona State. Yeah, bad hire. They hired Herm Edwards worse than Jeremy Pruitt, largely because of the way they hired him. I think he could have worked out, but they hired him and then didn't let him pick his staff. So that whole thing was a disaster at Arizona State from the start. Not fully his fault, but that's why the thing went south so badly. Jimmy Lake at Washington. He was hired right before Kalen DeBoer got there. The hire didn't work out, but I mean, he was the defensive coordinator for Chris Peterson. He was the coach in waiting, the guy that seemed destined to take over for Chris Peterson. It wasn't a bad move, so it wasn't a worse hire than Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee. Chris Peterson had great success at Washington, retired. Jimmy Lake seemed like the obvious choice to replace him. Mike Riley at Nebraska. Now, Mike Riley had a lot of success as a head coach before he was hired at Nebraska. But I'm still going to say that hire was worse than Jeremy Pruitt. Mike Riley was not having success at Nebraska towards the end before Nebraska hired him. From 2011 to 2014, Mike Riley went 3-9, 9-4, 7-6, 5-7. Nebraska hired him to replace Bo Pelini for not doing well enough when Bo Pelini had never won fewer than 9 games at Nebraska. It was a total mistake. That hire was bad on its face, despite Mike Riley's coaching experience at the time. Okay, he had done nothing but been mediocre at Oregon State. I don't know why they thought he would take Nebraska to the next level. He had 1 winning season at Nebraska, ironically lost to Tennessee. So I'm cold on Mike Riley I'm cold on Mike Riley. By the way, I guess the way I should say this is, am I hot on it being a worse hire than Jeremy Pruitt? So I'm hot on Mike Riley being a worse hire than Jeremy Pruitt. All right, here's a good one. Jeff Collins of Georgia Tech, number 6. Jeff Collins. Am I hot or cold on Jeff Collins being a worse hire than Jeremy Pruitt was on its face? And the answer to that is no. He had gone 7-6 and 8-4 at Temple. It's really hard to go 7-6 and 8-4 at Temple. And he had experience as Florida's defensive coordinator. Nope, I think Georgia Tech, not as bad of a hire as Jeremy Pruitt. Not a great hire, but not as bad of a hire as Jeremy Pruitt. I'm naming Jeremy Pruitt here. Now, number 4, Willie Taggart, Florida State. Not a worse hire on its face than Jeremy Pruitt. Not by a long shot. Willie Taggart had gone 10-2 at South Florida. He went 7-5 1 year at Oregon, but it did seem like he was going to build up Oregon after that because Mark Helfrich the program had fallen apart. So no, I'm cold on that. Willie Taggart, not a worse hire than Jeremy Pruitt, even though he didn't work out at Florida State. Ryan Walters, Purdue, who actually just recently got fired. Ryan Walters at Purdue was number 3 on this list. Was he a worse hire than Jeremy Pruitt on its face? Yes, I think he was a worse hire than Jeremy Pruitt on his face. He was Illinois' defensive coordinator and Missouri's defensive coordinator under Barry Odom and had not had hardly any success. I didn't think this was a good hire. It's not the type of hire Purdue needed to make when moving on from Jeff Brom, and it was a failure on its face, and it should have been seen as a failure on its face. Les Miles at Kansas. Worse hire than Jeremy Pruitt on its face? Yes, I know that sounds crazy, but the baggage with Les Miles was already out there when Les Miles got hired at Kansas from his time at LSU. And Les Miles, anybody who covered his tenure at LSU knew he was a bad coach who was a caretaker of a program that could wake up and get top 5 recruiting classes. Les Miles was not a smart guy. He was a bad hire for Kansas. Yes, on its face, and given his age, he was worse of a hire for Kansas and Jeremy Pruitt was for Tennessee. And number 1, Chad Morris for Arkansas. Absolutely on its face, a worse hire. Did not have the credentials as a coordinator that Jeremy Pruitt had. Now, Chad Morris had been a head coach, but as a head coach in 3 years at SMU, he went 2-10, 5-7, and 7-5. So his selling point was his experience as an offensive coordinator. But Clemson got better after he left as an offensive coordinator when they promoted Tony Elliott to the position. So yes, Chad Morris was worse on its face than Jeremy Pruitt. So with this list, who are the coaches that were worse hires on their face than Jeremy Pruitt? Chad Morris, Les Miles, Ryan Walters, Mike Riley. That's 4. Herm Edwards, 5. Mel Tucker, 6. And that's it. Those 6. So Jeremy Pruitt should actually be number 7 on this list. Not as bad as he's listed as a hire on this list, believe it or not. What about how he compares to other Tennessee hires on their face in the post-Philip Fulmer era? Excuse me. Let's bring that up. First, quick message from City Heating and Air, hot or cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air. Dare to compare.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports, comparing Jeremy Pruitt hires on their face to other hires Tennessee made. Lane Kiffin. Okay, guys, I'm sorry, but the Jeremy Pruitt hire was better than the Lane Kiffin hire on its face. It was. That's a hot take of mine. Lane Kiffin's a better coach, but this is based on their credentials at the time of when they were hired by Tennessee. Lane Kiffin's credentials were being USC's offensive coordinator. That carried as much weight as being Alabama's defensive coordinator with all the talent at the time, given when Lane Kiffin was USC's offensive coordinator. His other credential was getting fired publicly by the Raiders and Al Davis and being in a public spat with him and being called a liar. He had no real credentials. That was a splash attempt by Mike Hamilton and a move to try to overpay the staff to try to sell something at Tennessee in a big splash way. It was a failure. And it could have worked out, but the hire even on its face was not as good as the Jeremy Pruitt hire, believe it or not. Derek Dooley. Yeah, the hire on its face was worse than Jeremy Pruitt's. Even though Derek Dooley had been a head coach, he had a losing record in 3 years at Louisiana Tech as a head coach, only 1 winning season, and had never been a coordinator before then and had never had any success. So Derek Dooley was a worse hire on its face. Butch Jones. Okay. On its face, Butch Jones was a better hire than Jeremy Pruitt. Now, he didn't work out, and he's the most annoying coach I've ever covered. I have a disdain for him that I don't have for any of the other coaches. But in 6 years, he had won 4 championships before that. And I know people saying he inherited 2 programs from Brian Kelly, but they're smaller levels. You have to maintain that success. And he did. And he only had 1 losing season in 6 years. And he had he only had 2 years where he didn't win the conference title and only 1 year where he had a losing season. And by the way, he almost had 5 conference titles. He lost the 5th one on a final drive in his second year at Central Michigan. Butch Jones, on its face, was a very, very, very good hire coming from Cincinnati to Tennessee. Not a very, very good hire, but a better hire than Jeremy Pruitt. What about Jeremy Pruitt himself? On its face, better hires of the candidates during that time. Greg Schiano. No, I still was fine with nixing the Greg Schiano hire. There was too much baggage with Greg Schiano. He was toxic as an NFL coach, had a level of arrogance about him that never would have fitted in college at Tennessee again. Even though he'd had experience as a head coach at Rutgers. I get that. I think he had really fallen off towards the end. It wouldn't have worked. On his face, though, Jeff Brom, better hire than Jeremy Pruitt. Mike Leach, better hire than Jeremy Pruitt. Mike Gundy, better hire than Jeremy Pruitt. Dave Doran, no, not a better hire. Dave Doran had a ceiling. You didn't know if Jeremy Pruitt had a ceiling at the time. And finally, Josh Heupel or Jeremy Pruitt, better hire. On its face, Josh Heupel, but not by much, because remember, Josh Heupel's track record was just repeating what Scott Frost did by going undefeated his first year and then getting slightly worse each year at UCF. So we didn't know how he'd work out. So truth be told, it was a little tougher than you might think over who was better on its face. Portions of the program are brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia, daily updates, facebook.com/sports treasures TN, facebook.com/sports treasures TN. The poll question: what is Tennessee's remaining greatest position of need in the spring transfer portal? Offensive line at 33%, defensive line at 5%, wide receiver at 29%, safety at 33%. It is time for the stat of the day. And I got a good one for you guys, funny enough. Tennessee is going to open the season against Syracuse in Atlanta in what is a neutral site game. Now, this is going to be an interesting take I give you guys. In neutral site regular season games in Atlanta, Tennessee, ready for this, is 15-16. Yes, they are 15. I'm sorry, excuse me. They're 13-16. They are 13-16. Tennessee is 13-16. I wait, wrong stat. Take that out. I want to remove everything I just said. Okay. I want to remove everything I just said. Okay. I apologize. Totally got that mixed up. I want to repeat what I was saying. Excuse me. In neutral site regular season games in Atlanta, Tennessee's 1-1. Excuse me. I got the stat wrong again, didn't I? Guys, this has been a disaster of a stat of the day. All right, let me start this over. The stat of the day, I'm looking at wrong things and I pulled some things up and I just got it totally mixed up in what I was looking at. I want to apologize to you guys up front. That was a total mistake. So I'm going to start this over. Refresh. Stat of the day brought to you now. The stat of the day is Tennessee has played 2 neutral site regular season games in Atlanta. 2 neutral site regular season games in Atlanta. They are 2-0. Tennessee is 2-0 in their neutral site regular season games in Atlanta. They're going to play a third this year against Syracuse. However, in those 2 wins, well, I'm going to save that as another stat for another day, but they are 2-0. They beat NC State in 2012 on a Friday in Atlanta to open the season. And then they beat Georgia Tech, even though the Georgia Tech game was in Atlanta, it was technically a neutral site regular season game. They beat Georgia Tech in overtime in 2017. Now, the reason I got a little confused is because I was looking at straight up neutral site games for a minute, but there's a lot of Peach Bowls and SEC championship games in there. And I was trying to go straight with neutral site regular season games. Neutral site regular season games in Atlanta, Tennessee is 2-0. portions of the program are brought to you by, and the stat of the day are brought to you by Work Trucks. We're all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle. Now, time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down and has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is also quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks. Cargo vans, utility body trucks with the nap hide work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Truck supplies vehicles to people just like you and get you back on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks, and that's a fact. Service industry, remember Work Trucks. Work Trucks carries the trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks. Clinton Highway in Knoxville and in downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go online to worktrucksllc.com. Worktrucksllc.com with an X. Why risk chancing your future and business on the wrong piece of equipment that burns your time? WorkTrucksLLC.com. Work Trucks will also work to make sure you have the perfect vehicle you have to have. They'll even find a perfect truck, outfit it, and make sure it fits your needs to a T. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. WorkTrucksLLC.com. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. When we come back in 2 minutes, Donald Trump and Nick Saban trying to fix NIL. Will this work? Well, let's see. Stick with us. 2 minutes. Off the Hook Sports.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 Volume Ford dealer. Save up to $4,350 on a new Ford F-150 XLT, or get into a new Ford Ranger XLT with no payments for 90 days. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports, portions of the program brought to you by UPS Store Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated, 10629 Hardin Valley Road. Over the weekend, Nick Saban and Donald Trump both spoke at Alabama's commencement address. There were reports that Nick Saban had been talking with Donald Trump about ways to deal with NIL. As we know, there is a House settlement coming. Tommy Tuberville had been working with former Senator Joe Manchin to address NIL. They couldn't get a bill that they wanted last year, but Tommy Tuberville is still working on it. He's close with Nick Saban. A report came out now and it came out over the weekend, that Donald Trump is giving, quote, serious consideration to signing an executive order that would address payments to college athletes. A person familiar with the matter confirmed to USA Today. The person requested anonymity. Trump's view of the matter comes in the wake of a conversation he had with Saban. The order could potentially add oversight to name, image, and likeness, or NIL. And how the order would address it, though, was not immediately clear. Wall Street Journal first reported Trump considering the action. And it would help align with Saban, who's been highly critical of the current state of college sports. And now Ted Cruz is working on trying to pass a bill that would help deal with the NIL thing too. And Saban says that athletes' personal development is being hindered by the unregulated market of NIL. So what can Donald Trump do? Well, there are already court cases over him withholding funds from colleges and things like that over some other things. I don't want to get into that. I'm not trying to be political. Theoretically, he does have, you could maybe say under the Higher Education Act, certain power to leverage schools to abide by certain NIL stipulations that even the NCAA wouldn't have. Here's the problem, and here's the fundamental problem that is going to hinder Donald Trump as much as it would hinder Congress. The Sherman Antitrust Act is still on the books, and the Sherman Antitrust Act was passed by Congress in the late 1880s. And Donald Trump can't just overturn that with the stroke of a pen. Congress would have to overturn that. They're not going to overturn the Sherman Antitrust Act. They can modify it, but there's no way you can overturn that. That's how you make sure there's fair competition among companies in this country. There is no way to limit NIL money. None. People are confusing with NIL with paying players. And I'm partially at fault for this because I have let you guys think it all goes into a pot because it does all go into a pot. Effectively, you're just pulling money. Here's how it's in a pot, though. What a booster might spend to help a university renovate a stadium, they'll instead spend on giving a player an endorsement. And then the university will have to find another way to make money to get the revenue to upgrade their facilities. That's how NIL is really working right now. The problem is you can maybe there's definitely ways you can regulate schools paying players. You guys can talk about players unionizing. I'm all for that. But a unionization where the schools pay the players isn't going to stop NIL because NIL is endorsement deals. Endorsement deals have nothing to do with what the school would pay the players or what agreements the players would enter into. Nothing. They are technically on the side. And a booster can give a player any type of endorsement he wants under that guise to get that player to come play football for his university. There's no way to stop that. And there's no legal way to stop it. And there should not be a legal way to stop it. Okay? The NFL, you guys want to talk about a salary cap in the NFL, and everybody keeps thinking about that and how teams pay players. But the salaries is one thing. There's no limitations on the endorsement deals players can get. Outside of that, the NFL can't do that. That's a total antitrust violation to do that. And it would be the same for college football. There is no way Donald Trump or Congress or the NCAA or the schools could sit there and tell a player that they can't make as much money as they want in an unregulated market on NIL because it would directly violate the Sherman Antitrust Act. Now, maybe I don't know the full laws of the Antitrust Act, but maybe there are ways where the president himself and how he enforces it, because the president typically enforces, the executive branch enforces the laws carried out by Congress. So they could maybe put something in there through an executive order that determines, okay, we'll carve out an exception here with NIL and things like that. But there's no way that the Antitrust Act, as it's written, could stop a player from going to a booster and saying, I want this amount of money. I mean, how do you do that? That's the problem with this whole scenario, guys. And there's no real true way to regulate it. And again, the real problem is no one has actually brought up an effective way or fair way to regulate it. Why should a player not be allowed to make as much money as he can through his endorsements and his name, image, and likeness? Again, NIL is not what the schools would pay the players. That's not the same thing. Right now, the schools are helping the players find ways to get NIL endorsements through collectives that the schools have partnered with to streamline it. But technically, the NIL money, there is no legal way to regulate NIL money. This is not about a principle of paying players. This is not about a principle of paying of player development. Those things you can all have a conversation about, and they're lovely, and they're wonderful. And I wish the clouds would part and life would be perfect and we could be kings and set the rules to make the world perfect. That's not how this is. Okay. There are laws on the books that do not let you hinder a player's opportunities to make money off their name, image, or likeness. That does not come from the school. So what could Donald Trump do through an executive order? I mean, what could Donald Trump do? And I'm going to set that up as the poll question. First, the original poll question: which Tennessee head coaching hire was the worst on its face without the benefit of hindsight? Lane Kiffin, Derek Dooley, Butch Jones, Jeremy Pruitt. Derek Dooley leads at 50%, Butch Jones at 0%, Jeremy Pruitt at 33%. Now Lane Kiffin at 11% and Derek Dooley at 56%. I'm going to change the poll question now to this. Okay. And by the way, this is what the H. The question is going to be, do you support any executive action to curb NIL? Say yes, it's gotten out of hand. No. No, the government shouldn't limit player pay. Shouldn't cap pay. Or how about this? No, the government can't cap player pay. Okay, here we go. Do you support any executive action to curb NIL? Yes, it's gotten out of hand. No, government can't cap player pay. I'm leaning on no, government can't cap player pay. I mean, I'm sorry. It's just, I don't think it's a good idea at all for this. Nothing that would be done would be legal on that front. And that's the issue. What the H, brought to you by Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
All right, so it's up there now. You guys take a look at it. Do you support any executive action to curb NIL? Yes, it's gotten out of hand. No, government can't cap player pay. I'm not like one of those keep the government out of everything type of guys. I just don't know a way the government can get involved in this. There's already a congressional law on antitrust laws, and I don't think there's any way to fix that. And there's no way to regulate it either. How do you regulate players making money off their own name? I mean, should the government be allowed to step in and say, oh, well, this car company wants to do an endorsement with this player, but you can't do it because you already have this much money in endorsements elsewhere, and that would give this school that you're at an unfair advantage because that car company is a booster for the school. I mean, that makes no sense, guys, right? I just don't think that you can do that. The only way you can maybe find a legal loophole is say that it doesn't count as an endorsement deal if you are technically a booster for the school. And maybe set a guideline. Maybe this is the fix. Set a guideline for what constitutes a booster for the school. And that guideline would then come around to say, if you are technically a booster for a school, then if you give an endorsement to any player for that school, you are technically not giving them advertising revenue. Maybe that's a workaround with the Antitrust Act, but man, I don't think the courts would be able to really solve that situation. That's a tough one to figure out, okay? So that's going to be our final poll question. We're going to leave it up for the rest of the day. You guys give us your thoughts. I just think that there's not really a lot you can do with this situation. I think it just is what it is with NIL, and I don't think there's any way to fix it. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, play to win, why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. We're live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. I want to thank you guys all for tuning in today. And I want to remind you guys all that I will be solo this week. Dave's dealing with a personal matter. Again, just please keep him in your thoughts and prayers. We hope to have him back next week. He will be back. But Dave is out this week. So please hit that like and subscribe button. We're still building something great here at Off the Hook Sports. We want you to be a part of it. I will be back on tomorrow. We're live every weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern with Caleb Calhoun. This has been a